Hello, we're Group 2, and our chapters that we'll be presenting are Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. My name is Natalia Terreros.
I'm Katie Geyer.
Greta Langley.
And I'm Amy Klucher.
So Chapter 3 is titled The Contributions and Criticisms of Diffusion Research, and it discusses the main criticisms of diffusion research and offers solutions for these weaknesses. So although diffusion research is highly recognized for its contributions to understanding human behavior and the development of effective social change programs, it is not without critiques. However, these critiques do have merit and they offer opportunities to help improve the field of diffusion research. One of the major downfalls is called the pro-innovation bias, and this is the idea that innovations will be rapidly diffused and adopted by all members of society, and that innovations shall neither be rejected nor reinvented. This bias results in researchers ignoring or underemphasizing the rejection of innovations which are implemented into social practice. So the question here that remains is, why does the pro-innovation bias occur in diffusion research? So for starters, most diffusion research is funded by change agencies, which by nature have a pro-innovation bias because their entire purpose is to promote and diffuse innovations. Another reason for the persistence of this bias is that failed diffusion efforts and rejected innovations are abandoned without visible traces that can be reconstructed. And so therefore the reasons for failure are not investigated and not well understood. Because the focus tends to be placed on successful innovations, we know much more about the adoption of innovations than we do about the failure of innovations. So despite the pro-innovation bias being a major downfall, there are strategies that we can take to overcome this shortfall. First off, the most important step is, of course, to admit that a pro-innovation bias may be existing in your research. This is the only way we can begin to implement strategies to overcome the bias. So one approach is to collect data while in the diffusion process as opposed to solely when the process is complete. And collecting data along the way will allow researchers to investigate less successful aspects of innovation and adoption in real time as opposed to only focusing on end results. Another approach is for diffusion researchers to seek out failed innovations for study. So investigating unsuccessful innovations would allow for a comparative analysis between successful and failed innovations within a social group. And this can also help overcome the pro-innovation bias. Diffusion researchers should also acknowledge that rejection, discontinuation, and reinvention of an innovation may occur during the implementation process, and community members' perceptions of innovation should be sought. Seeking feedback from people in the community who are engaged and impacted in the innovation process can help researchers understand both positive and negative viewpoints, which can help reduce the pro-innovation bias. Additionally, researchers should also be investigating the broader context in which innovation diffuses. Understanding the broader system can help unveil possible pro-innovation biases. Lastly, diffusion researchers should seek a better understanding of why innovations are adopted in a social group, as well as why they are rejected or discontinued. Understanding the why and seeing innovation through the eyes of the community members can help provide clarity of the forces at play when considering the success or failure of an innovation, which can help reduce pro-innovation bias.
So some of the other criticisms with diffusion research, one of them is source bias, basically saying that the diffusion research sides with the change agency. And then that also comes into play with system blame versus individual blame. Individual blame tends to blame people in difficult situations for their own predicament. So initially when diffusion research was introduced, there was a lot more individual blame with things, and now we're starting to see somewhat of a shift to system blame. The individual blame came about because they felt that if the individual is the unit of response, then they must be the unit of analysis, and therefore that's where the problems come into play. Another bias that you'll see is a recall problem. So basically you can have problems because they are interviewed at one point in time, typically done with a survey. So if individuals are asked to report like when they started something new, they may not necessarily remember everything. So one of the ways that some of these things could be done is having them do field experiments. And then if they're directly at the site, then they'll have a better idea. Or you can also gather the information at multiple points in time. And some of these things with the individual being like the unit of analysis, some of that came about because of the pro-innovation bias, because it led to avoiding or ignoring the issues of causality among the variables of, like, for instance, dependent versus independent variables that we're used to in some of our research. And then there's also issues because of like where diffusion research first came about and then spreading it into other countries. So it's been criticized in developing nations because it doesn't take into account socioeconomic differences. So basically they would come up with these things like in the US where we have more resources and things like that, and then try to go somewhere like Africa and implement the same things and then cause problems, but then they would want to blame individuals for those problems. So those things all were problems associated with diffusion research as well.
Okay, so chapter 4 really talks about it's the generations of innovation. So I'm going to talk about the first 3 steps of the innovation development process. So it really begins with recognizing a problem or need, and this stimulates research and development activities designed to create an innovation to solve the problem or need. Scientists can perceive a future problem and start research to find a solution, or a problem may arise, which then starts the research process. So that's step 1. The next step is basic and applied research, and most innovations that have been investigated in diffusion research have been technological innovations. The term technology is often interchangeable with innovation. Technology is designed for instrumental action that reduces the uncertainty and the cause-effect relationships involved in achieving a desired outcome. So the knowledge base for technology usually derives from basic research. So therefore, basic research is the original investigations for the advancement of scientific knowledge, and that do not have specific objectives of applying this knowledge to a practical problem. In contrast, applied research consists of scientific investigations that are intended to solve practical problems. Applied researchers are the main users of the basic research. An invention may result from a sequence of basic research followed by applied research, and then that leads to development. So development is based closely on research, and it's difficult to separate the two. Development of an innovation is the process of putting a new idea in a form that is expected to meet the needs of an audience or potential adopters. But there is an uncertainty in research and development. The inventor, developer must anticipate the problems of other individuals and or the organizations that will be the ultimate adopters of the innovation. The behavior of others in his or her own research and development organization, competitors, government policymakers, and many other factors all affect the success of a new idea. So the innovation development process is driven by the exchange of technical information in the face of a high degree of uncertainty.
The 4th step in the innovation development process is commercialization, which is the production, manufacturing, packaging, marketing, and distribution of a product that embodies an innovation. Simply put, it is the conversion of an idea from research into a product or service for sale in the marketplace. This typically happens in clusters. Think of as a technology cluster, which is two or more innovations that are packaged together because they have a functional interrelatedness. Think about the pacemaker. Think about all the innovations that had to come together to make that pacemaker a reality. The fifth step in the innovation development process is diffusion and adoption. So after an innovation is created and judged ready for diffusion, innovation gatekeeping occurs. Innovation gatekeeping is basically how the new innovation is diffused to potential adopters. Think of clinical trials as a way to evaluate the effects of an innovation under real-life conditions. And this is part of this diffusion and adoption process. The sixth step in the innovation development process involves consequences. Consequences are basically changes that occur to an individual or social system as a result of an adoption or rejection of innovation. It's important to note that these steps of the innovation development process are not necessarily linear, and socioeconomics and equality are an important factor in the innovation diffusion. Think about a new hybrid car. This kind of car is going to have a higher expense, so people of a lower socioeconomic status will not have access to this innovation. Our question for you today is going to be about social construction of technology. There are two theories. The technological determination theory is a belief that technology causes changes in society. The social determinism belief is that technology shapes societal factors. Which theory do you think better accurately describes today's society's relationship with technology? Thank you.